Welcome to a special meeting by the City Council, Tuesday, June 18th. Can we have roll call, please?
Councilmember Jean Costa, absent. Councilmember Robles.
Present.
Councilmember Hernandez. Mayor Julia.
Here. Whitney should be.
Oh, I'm here. Sorry, everybody.
We have roll call. Will you please stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance? Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, Hold on. Next item is community participation. So far, I have one person that wishes to speak, Mr. Alvarez.
Too bad he's not here. This weekend, for the first time in a long time, we've had actual activities in our police department getting tickets out. We have blue tickets about time. Apparently, each time they get a ticket, city gets $55 per ticket. That's the reward from the state. Apparently, on that, we need more action dealing with people doing U-turns. Basically, the community without policing and a community doesn't obey the law really messes things up altogether. So I want to thank the police department for doing their job this weekend. Another area is blight in the city of Guadalupe. I mentioned the fact there's 2 houses here that are horrendous. They should be tagged, one should be condemned. But before we go to that, have we outreach to get the hold of the owners to see how they can improve the properties, which actually improves the community as a whole? On that, that's my concern. There's a lot of lack of activity within the enforcement dealing in looking at homes, yards and whatnot. Off 11th Street, there's apartment dwellings that are painted littering and patches. A community that does not take care of itself will dwindle. And it's an eyesore and it's an embarrassment. We have 5 of you guys to take care of the goods of this community in every respect possible. We have staff that's supposed to do certain responsibilities. I see they're not doing it. Long time living here, 75 years living here. I love the school town. Not so much the people, but the town has good history on it. Right? It's your responsibility to take care of that. Thank you.
Thank you. For public?
Yeah.
Another request to speak, Medea. What's that? That's just not an agenda, not public.
One of them is on the agenda and the other one is not.
Okay, so which one are you on? It says not on the agenda.
Okay, maybe I didn't complete the form
Okay,
properly.
oh, you're on number 4 then,
I wanted to make a comment about, just an observation about the theater and some stuff that I've heard, and then I wanted to kind of support, something that's not on the agenda regarding, the firework fundraiser, some fees associated with that.
okay, well, that's not on the,
So maybe just the theater that I can share my comments.
you can do 4, but if you want to comment on what's not on the agenda, you're more than welcome to do that.
Okay, so I'll
So
start.
go ahead on the fireworks if you want.
Thank you. I think Sam will be sharing a little more, but I believe that since last year, there's been an increase in some of the fees associated with the space and also some of the storage where we would we kind of placed it from where we would source some of the fireworks. I think there were some new fees that were shared. Again, I think Sam had a little bit more, but I was just hoping that we could consider the new suggested fees that we kind of came up with. And I'll wait my turn.
For the other item, or, yes. Okay, thank you. I go, Sam.
Hey, good evening, everyone. Yeah, I work with families engagement, community engagement and leadership development. We've been doing it for 14 years. Our group is called the Guadalupe Community Changers. We collaborate with the city and a few nonprofits in the city and across the county. And our major fundraiser is coming up. And it brings us much needed funding to keep this group going. And so I know that this year, apparently, the actual fees were dug up, right? The fee schedule, but it's quite an increase for, you know, the type of work that this funding supports. This funding is hard to come by. You can't really get it from traditional funding sources. And so any little money we can save or the city can support, that would be amazing. You know, we more recently, the chamber and our organization, the Family Service Agency, reading a potential grant to beautify one of our parks. And so, you know, just showing that kind of collaboration and partnership, we hope that you might consider the reduction of fees for this particular project. So thank you very much. And
Thanks, Sam. Let's talk some other individuals walk in. Is there an individual out there that wants to speak on an item that's not on the agenda? Not on agenda?
Not on the agenda.
Okay, please. That's it, okay. Well,
I have a not on the agenda item that I didn't fill out a form for.
Okay.
okay,
Let's do number 6.
okay, okay, okay. You're also on the other item, so go ahead, go ahead.
This is a common problem in Guadalupe, the tractors. The tractors going through town, the tractors coming into town and not pulling over. I came home yesterday from Lake Tahoe. I'd been on the road for 8 hours. It took me 20 minutes to get from Oso Flaco Road through Guadalupe to turn on 5th Street to go home. That's all I want to say. Please look at the tractors, make them pull over. I mean, they can't control them out of town, but they can control them in town. And there's no way to get around really to 5th Street without going up to Highway 166.
Thank you. All right. Next item, this is the regular business, Royal Theater project presentation and update. Mr. Bradbury. By the way, there's several people on Zoom.
Okay.
That's Phil, attorney. There's Whitney Furness. And James.
Yep.
Is that David Tama?
Correct, yeah. I'm a bond attorney, working for the city.
Okay, thank you. All right.
Good evening, Julian, council members and city staff and community members. And those that are online also listening in. Not sure how the questioning goes. But if anybody wants to stop me in the middle of this presentation and ask questions, I'm fine with that, but I'll let you.
I'd rather you go through it and then they can chime in. So.
Okay, will do. So I've been on this project for 18-19, doing this project from the beginning to now. Yes.
Can you talk closer? We have people back there. that
Okay,
can't hear.
not hearing.
If you can,
Will do.
thank you.
So this project includes renovating the building on the left to create the building on the right. You'll notice in that building on the right that there are some additional pieces. So Andrew will go over this a little more, but I wanted to just let you know there's a 3-story building, there's an amphitheater behind that wall. And what you're seeing to the right of the theater is a plaza. Now that plaza is there mainly because there is no space in the front of the theater to have people congregate before and after. The value of the plaza, it will then become 24/7 plaza for the community. Next one. So this is where we are to date. We have raised in our capital campaigns, I would say, 10.5 million. We have a building that is now listed federally and state as a historic building. Our plans are 100% approved. They've gone through plan check. They've also gone all the way up to federal process to be approved both federally as well. And the main reason for that is the theater itself has to meet federal historic codes and state historic codes. So it's a different process to get the plans approved, both of those plans in different places. The original project had the Royal Theatre and two vacant properties attached. Those vacant properties are now part of the theatre APN, so it's all one project now, one site. And the original agreement was we needed to do the theatre and incorporate the two vacant properties into one project. And that's what you saw on the right side and what the project is today as planned. A plan check is complete, which is part of the 100%. We also have permits that have been issued, and all of the bid packages, which is what we send to the construction firms and get an actual bid, also have been approved. And just to be clear, that approval process is not just the city. All of the funders that we have also are required to approve the bid package. So it's everybody's approved it. What that means is we should be able to release the bid package tomorrow. And we're ready to do that. That's where the project stands today, except for this issue that we're here today to discuss, which is the gap in funding. Next one. So this is there's the old historic building. That's the oldest picture we could find of the Royal. There is to get the building designated as historic, we did hire somebody to do a report. And by the way, that report is available for you to get a copy of. I'm thinking we had a conversation that we were going to get it online for people to get that historic report, and I'm not sure if that was done. We also had to hire an architect specifically that does historic renovation. It's important to remember that the reason this building met the historic standards is for two pieces. One, because of the brick building, in other words, the architectural importance of the building, but also because of the important cultural part of the building. And the cultural side of it is the owners of this building were interned and never got the building back. So those two aspects of it, and the other part of this is the cultural importance of this is at the time of the internment process, much of the downtown was considered a Japantown. And with internment, that all went away. But not completely, we still have most houses. Yes. I won't say everywhere. Anyway, we also have gone through a process to allow us to accept what's called historic tax credit. And I'll be talking about that later in the presentation. Next one. So these are we talked about progress. Now let's tell you why that progress, why that, bid package isn't going out tomorrow. One is we have a financial gap. I'll talk a little bit about why that gap suddenly came up and why we have a gap, a little later in the presentation. The thing to remember is we have at least one funding source, potentially another, but we presently have one funding source that says, you're okay, you can release the bid package, not a problem, release it, not an issue. But you may not sign a contract with a contractor until all funding is in place. So one of the things that you need to know about contractors, they're not going to sign a contract and then wait 9 months before it actually starts the project, because they'll say that amount is not the same anymore. So you really can't go through the bid process and hire in a contractor unless all funding is in place. Next. This is just an example of some of the things that we've been exploring of what the actual Performing Arts Centre will be able to do. These are just a few examples. I will say it's important to remember that we see this as a community facility, and much of what we expect to get done in this theatre or see should be related to the community. And all of these buildings will have value. So the 3-story building has classrooms for people to do presentations or art classes. The amphitheater allows the community to do outside activities, even when the theater is being used. So it allows 2 events to go on at the same time. We expect this to be a multicultural event calendar. We expect to see many items going on in the theater that is in Spanish, as well as in English. Another thing is, while at this moment in time, the city does not have an operator for the theater, we do have a process of getting an operator for the theater. In that process, one of the requirements in the management agreement will be that the operator creates an advisory committee made up of local community members to ensure that it is actually continued to be used by the community as much as it is as a performing arts centre with paid tickets. Yeah, okay, thanks. So, in talking about the value of this project, I wanted to break it down into 4 components. These are 2. One is its economic value, and I would almost say from why we started this project is the economic. In other words, most of the people that talked to us about this project talked about the value of this theatre being reopened and the value to the local downtown business. I'll give you an example. We applied to the EDA. And as part of that EDA application, we asked the local businesses, property owners, to give us an idea of what would happen if the theatre opened. Would they hire more staff? Would they build on those vacant lots? Now, I will tell you that the numbers we got are probably a little exaggerated. They usually are. But here's the numbers we got. It would increase jobs by 507. It would create an investment of 11,430,000 from improving the business buildings themselves to building on vacancies. So from an economic perspective, we also, I'll have another slide on this, but we also have three, and in fact, I think there's four. Plans that have been done in the past 4 years, from the general plan to the Resilience Guadalupe. To the downtown revitalization and mobility, and then we also have the PERC plan as well. Every single one of those plans indicated that the Royal Theatre was the most important thing in the revitalization of the downtown Guadalupe. Historically, as you can see, there's a few things on the historic side. First of all, the remembrance of the Japantown, of the internment and things that went on that created the Royal Theatre, and the end of Japanese ownership of that building. There is also, from the very beginning when we started this project, I have heard, I would say 100 people tell me their story of them going to the theatre. The community is full of people who remember their time when that theatre was open in its heyday. And many of those people still live in Guadalupe. Next slide. So Guadalupe is going to have, if we're successful, Guadalupe is going to have its first ever performing arts center. And from an economics perspective, I want to go back to that just because I forgot one of the subjects. When we started working on the Guadalupe Business Association and creating that association, one of the things that the association wanted to have is to have a stronger tourism. And one of the subject matters that always came up is too many dollars leave Guadalupe. And not enough dollars come into Guadalupe. The theatre was always considered from the Guadalupe Business Association and their tourism request. The Royal Theatre was always considered that thing that could bring more dollars into Guadalupe. So from an art perspective, there is nothing in town for the kids and for the adults even to be involved in performing arts. Whether it's using the classrooms to teach film and documentary, or whether it's, as you did some time ago, have 3 years of doing local kids doing performing theatre in the Royal Theatre. And that should be done again. Our kids in Guadalupe should be coming together and doing their own performances, and it should be done in the Royal Theatre. Or even the amphitheatre. So it's important from an art and an entertainment perspective that that theatre get done. From a community use, it is incredibly important that the operator, the city, ensure that this project is used for nonprofits. I was actually thinking about this and the September 16th event with the Comunidad. And I can see them, instead of using a stage like they used to do and that they did and do, I can see them using the theatre for their presentations and having those doors open for people to use, for the Comunidad to use it to have events in there for the day. I also see it as really important for community nonprofits to be using it as a potential opportunity to raise funds with events in that theatre. So the community aspect of this theatre is really important. Okay, next. So just a little bit about how we got to 10.5 million. And by the way, I'll have a conversation about this a little later also, but the idea of a capital campaign, we've heard that, capital campaign. I want you to remember that this 10.4 million is a capital campaign. We've raised in a capital campaign 4.5 million, 10.5 million up to now. Economic Development Administration is 4.8, as you can see. The California Art Council is not an application Senator Monique Lamont gave us that money through the state legislature and the general fund. It then went through the California Art Council as a pass-through. But that 5 million is actually from the state legislature. And then the other money where you see for 600,000, this is money that's related to, so the Royal Theatre was originally purchased by the city's redevelopment agency. The state eliminated the redevelopment agency, put this quote-unquote successor agency in charge, and then eventually the successor agency gave it to the city. And they gave 600,000 with it. And the agreement is that they will use that 600,000 to renovate the Royal Theatre into a performing arts center. These funds are available. However, this may come up, but all of them have some restrictions. The Economic Development Administration has the strongest restriction, and they're centered around the timing. We will lose this money depending on how long it takes us to finish the project. Next. This is just the city plans. I put them up there. I believe all three of these plans are online at the city. All three of them, you will see there's a reference to the Royal Theatre in multiple places. Next. And as an example, this is on page 104 of the resilience plan. To give you a little bit of background, this was done by an economic development consultant that Los Amigos hired to do the economic development side of our resilience plan. And what this does is it shows you what are the highest cost to get things done, which is anything on the going up. Anything going to the right has the highest impact, and anything at the bottom has the lowest impact and lowest cost. And as you can see, the Royal Theatre is listed as the highest cost. It's also listed as the highest impact. So this is an example of just one item in the plan that references the Royal Theatre and it's important. Now, next. This is really hard to see, so I'm hoping, can that be enlargeable? Probably not. No, okay. You should see my version, a bit smaller. I think I can remember it. I put it together, so let's see. You will see the two top lines. I believe in your package, you have the most latest cost estimate, which was done May 24 or April 24. I don't remember, one of those two. It's in the package. You will see that it's broken down into two items. One is the construction, the buildings themselves, and then the site work, the cost of doing the site work. So they're breaking down into the amount that you see there. That is the cost of the construction. The most important thing to remember about that is it's an estimate. We actually won't know the real price until the bids come in and we pick the lowest one. So theoretically, it could come in lower. And theoretically, it could come in higher.
Can hear you, Tom.
I'm really close to the mic. Let me see. Is there an up and down?
No, that's it.
Is this better? Okay. So the money you're seeing up here, so the first two lines is the actual construction cost, but it's an estimate. It's a pretty standard thing to do with construction. projects is to get an estimate ahead of time, so you have a good idea, potentially a good idea what the actual project will cost. The rest of the line items that you see are directly related to soft costs, the cost to get the project done. For example, me. For the attorneys that we need, for the inspectors. So in this particular case, the city of Guadalupe does not have its own inspectors to do projects like this. So we have to hire firms to do the inspection work. And just so you know, inspection work is a company that is on site every single day to inspect all work that's being done on the site. So all of those soft costs are there. They're pretty solid costs because most of them are based on contracts that the individuals already have. So you have a set price because you have a contract. So most of these soft costs are pretty standard costs where there's a contract associated with it, and I just put the contract amount in. There are some that we don't have full amounts yet because we don't know what the finished product would be. So some of the attorneys' fees are not finalized because they're still doing work. But most of the costs in there are standard and pretty much set. So what you see down, most of the way down before you get into the funding side of it, is you'll see a total for the soft costs and then a total for the project. And then below that, so what we usually say in this kind of work is the top is the uses and the bottom is the sources. And you can see the sources are the 3 funding sources we talked about. And what you see is the gap, which is in red. And just rounding it, it's 3 million. Let me just make sure I've got everything that I wanted to talk about. There are a few things that I consider potentially missing, but I'm not overly concerned about them. Maybe Andrew could answer this one, but there isn't a whole lot of contingency in this. The potential for prices to go higher. Some of it's built into the estimate. But as an example, with Leroy Park, it was 6+ months more to get it finished with all of the different changes, which is something fairly general when it comes to rehab. Rehabs are always an awkward one because you don't know what you've got until you open up the walls. So that took 6 months more. So some of the soft costs ended up going longer for that reason, and some of the prices went up based on that. But that's a possibility, but there are contingencies in there. I think that'll do for now. I'm sure there'll be questions on that one. Next. So at the early part of this project, once we got an idea of price and we had an idea that there would be some kind of a gap in the price, we explored tax credits. We first explored historic tax credits because we obviously have a historic building and historic tax credits are pretty easy to get, they're expected. New market tax credits are a little harder, but we hired a consultant that was going to do both, and their statement to us for a year was we should have no problem getting both of them. About April of this year, our consultant came back to us and said, we pitched this project for new market tax credits. We pitched it, nobody wants it. So suddenly we found we had a gap. One that we were not expecting. We also, with the historic tax credits, we also had a meeting with all of the attorneys involved. And one of the attorneys was the EDA's attorney. And their statement to us about 2 months ago was, so historic tax credits, the credits come from the Fed and they're required to go to a certain entity. So new market tax credits must go to a non-profit, which is why the city created a non-profit for that purpose. Historic tax credits must go to a for-profit. The problem with the EDA is the EDA says you can't use EDA money where it's going to a for-profit because that's enriching a private entity. So we lost historics as well. Now, there's a load of scenarios that can come down this road doing this project, one of them being losing the EDA money. So if we were to lose the EDA money from a timing perspective, we can go back and get the historics. And the historics are actually sitting ready to be given to us under the circumstances that we can pay them. I think that's pretty much it on this. Next slide. There we go. So, once we came to the conclusion that new market tax credits were no longer available, we have been, the city has been looking at other alternatives to see if any of those alternatives would work. As an example, I spoke to a number of banks and got some loan estimates from banks for them to fund the 3 million. I think the best one I got was it would, for 30 years, the city would be paying 87,000 every 6 months. If we did it, that's what they call, a commercial bank. We also went to the legislature because the legislature's been very good with this town. They've given us a lot of money. So I did go back to them. The problem is the feds are not funding anything through our congressmen or our senators until 2025, which is too late. I did not go to the state because they gave us 5. And I figured it'd be rude to ask them for more. And I was told it'd be rude to ask for more. So we never asked for any more from the state. So the state legislature was not an option for filling the gap. The USDA loan, which is also a 30-year loan, repayment of debt, all it does is reduce it from 80 to 60. It's still a loan, it's still 3% right now, so it's still not a good loan. There are 2 other potentials, as well as the general obligation bond, and that is foundations and a capital campaign. A different capital campaign. So a capital campaign that has been discussed around town is pretty similar to the one that we did for Leroy Park. And that was, I think, probably maybe a year's worth of capital campaign. We probably spent about a year, and we got 600,000 from that, which is a really good number. The issue with capital campaigns in that sense, where you're selling a seat or a name on it, all of those kinds of things, really they are things that a non-profit has to do. The city can't do a capital campaign. A non-profit has to do that capital campaign. And at this point, no non-profit has come forward to say they would do a capital campaign. I'm sure if a non-profit was interested in doing a capital campaign and put a proposal in front of the council, I would bet they would say yes. But you have to put that proposal in front of the council, because the council is the one, it's their building. They have to agree to the names on the checks. Foundations is another approach that can be taken, and let me just say it this way, we're going forward with a general bond. If I can find money from some other source that says we don't need the general bond, then that would be great. But until we get that funding, and I'm looking and looking and looking, but until we get it, it's a general bond. The other thing that I think is important, and it's part of why Capital Campaigns Foundation's general bond is important. If you're opening up a new theatre that's never been around before, that's a performing arts centre, it's gonna have an operator that's never operated before. That's going to need time to learn the business. You do not want to put debt on that nonprofit and that building. It needs to be debt-free to be sustainable. And that's the approach of the bond versus the foundation versus any other possibility to find money. You want it to be debt-free on operating. So they've got to start up, hire staff with no money. Or they're gonna have to raise money before they start, right? So from that perspective, it's important from a sustainability that there's no debt, especially when you think how much the commercial is wanting to put debt on the property. That's just not gonna work. Okay, next. That one is not, so I've had, the one you see here, I have had it corrected. The numbers are correct. What it didn't say in the one that I now have, which I will be passing, which I will get out to the community, is after the numbers to the right is a words. It says annual. So there have been some statements around the community that the $77 that they see is a monthly. It's an annual. So I want to make sure that everybody knows it's an annual. Because I've seen statements that the 77 is actually 1,000 every year. And it's not 1,000 every year, it's 77. So I will have this updated with annual on there to make sure that that's clear. Next slide, and I think that's it. If you want to have a conversation with Andrew and call him names, so you still have his email like that.
Yeah,
And
you have an idea of precision, you want to talk about that? Precision,
that, I did mention it just briefly, that is
Okay.
the most recent
right,
estimate,
okay,
and the total numbers are on the slide that you saw. He's up next.
okay, well,
Did you want Andrew up now?
yes,
Okay.
and we'll open up for questions.
Any questions?
And then Andrew,
Hello, my name is Andrew Goodwin. I am the architect of the Royal Theater project. I was also the architect for Leroy Park. So I've been working in the community 2017 on 2016. Joined Tom and the city. So I want to first say thank you to mayor and council members and staff and public. Because it's been really great working with the city since Leroy Park. We were invited after going through the grant application for Leroy Park and then subsequently getting the project to do the architecture and engineering for it to come and see what could be done for the Royal Theater. Now, having been in the area and been around town, I actually had never been able to go inside the Royal Theater. So it was really fun to be invited to go inside something that I really loved and wanted to see. So when I got the opportunity, we were told two things. One was the building had to stay and it had to be renovated to bring it back to life. And the second was we have to incorporate all the land around it into this project and grow it as an economic center. So what you're going to see is the result of many years of conversation and design iterations to create a project that was both an economic opportunity, but also gave birth to the resurgence of an existing building without neglecting it or downplaying it or any of that. So that's what you're gonna see here in a second. Next slide, please. So our team, it's not just me, Andrew Goodwin Designs is our architecture firm. We're joined by a host of other local engineers, both structural, civil, landscape, electrical, and mechanical, all from the region. And then, as Tom had alluded to, we went out and got a very established and well thought of historic architects to deal with the federal and the state guidelines. We got a great group out of LA and locally to do audio and acoustics. And then a wonderful friend of mine does fire down in Ventura, has been doing it for UCSB, Cal, and is very familiar with all the fire regulations on historic buildings. So that's our team that's been working on this. Next, please. What you're seeing here are the original vision and opportunities of what we could do with the building and the property from 2019. We were asked to provide pro bono services to do potential expansion. We gave an opportunity here to show that there could be phases of this development. And what you're seeing on the right-hand side, you can kind of see the rows and the semblance of a stage. That's the existing theater. Behind it was an addition that we were calling kind of the green room and the kitchen, the lobby area. And then behind that was going to be a much larger black box theater and multi-purpose center. That was the original plan. So that is kind of where we started. And as the project became a reality, we had to fine tune it. Next, please. We looked at the building in August of 2020. It was 2020 or 20. No, it was 2020 because it was COVID. And took our whole team through it. And the initial assessment was, wow, there's a lot of things that we need to do to improve it. And the second was, how often is it that we have a rectangular turn of the century kind of almost Art Deco box theater, which doesn't exist. I'm going to tell you this right now. It does not exist in the world because they're all torn down. So you have a jewel and we knew that we had to honor it. So what we did was we first went around to all of our consultants and said, okay, how do we keep what we've got? And so the first part of the project was to renovate and retrofit and create structural stability of this box. Next page, please. You're seeing a kind of an aerial view that we did of a drone shot of this. Next, please. So what you're seeing here are the 3 tracks that we were responsible for. Lot number 4, which is the top left corner, that rectangle is the actual Royal Theater. One thing that you're seeing here is the actual extent of the building meeting the lot lines. So back in the day, there was no parking requirement. There was no parking lot. There was nothing else to this property except for that box theater. The parcel behind it, lot 3, and then the one below that, lot 2, were to all be combined so that the resulting project could meet current codes for both parking, stormwater retention, allowing for landscape and public areas to be preserved. So that's what we were tasked to do. Next, please. This is also a quick sketch or a plan of the existing theater. Again, this doesn't meet current code, so we had to go through a very rigorous process with the state and federal government for historic buildings to make sure it could meet accessible codes that are today's standard for wheelchair accessibility, while not hurting the historic provenance and prominence of this building. So this is what the existing plan is. You go to the next page. You'll see here that our path was in blue on the right-hand side to restore the facade and preserve the entry lobby, which has a beautiful mosaic tile. In green, we had to add new ADA accessible restrooms and concessions. In red, we were primarily just refurbishing seating, allowing about 200 to 220 seats in the theater. And that meets code for aisles and all of that, because the current setup, I don't believe ever had the code minimum distance between them. And then in yellow, we had to repair the stage. The stage is in pretty good condition, but what we're trying to do is provide flexibility for future performances. It's not set up for anything really except a movie theater, like a picture screen. It needs to be more so that there's opportunity economically. And so we went through an exhaustive design iteration to try to figure out how we could make more of that stage. Go to the next page. So this is the floor plan of the resulting addition. And one thing to note that is really, really important in this design is the federal government and the state government tells us what to do with historic buildings. They tell us first and foremost, you cannot emulate the design with an addition. You cannot put a brick building next to a brick building and make it look like it was original. The second thing is they say the building that's addition to it has to be subservient, both in perspective and in style. It means that it can't be gaudy and be the overlooked item on a property. So we took that into account from Highway 1, looking down. That building is way in the back and it takes no precedence over the Grand Marquis. And that third thing that's kind of important is that we had to create a hyphen. So that's why the building kind of juts out a little bit. It has to show where the break of the existing versus the new occurs. Next page, please. I think you'll see it. So what you're seeing here is we put in a new stair on the right that goes up to the existing second floor to expand the second floor. There's a new concession, brand new concession area, and we call it a lounge, but it's really where a lot of the audiovisual equipment will go. And then we repaired all of the bathrooms up in that front area so that they're ADA accessible and there's more fixtures. We replaced the seat, expanded the stage back past the existing wall and created a green room and backstage area that will allow people to stage fixtures and equipments, bring in guests that can have a place to stay and use the restroom before they go on and perform. Behind that, up to the back left corner, is a loading dock that goes into a new commercial kitchen. The commercial kitchen itself allows for us to use the back half of the building when the front half of the building is in use or doesn't need to be used for things like wedding receptions, quinceañeras, even hosting just somebody coming in to use the commercial kitchen and rent it out so that they can load up a food truck. That's a really important feature because we have found that commercial kitchens are a pretty easy way to find rentable income. So we added that to this project. On the back, you also see additional restrooms to meet current code for the count of people and the number of fixtures we need to have in the building. And to the top left corner is an elevator and stair that goes up to the next floors. Next page, please. On the second floor, we have a pretty big flexible space that includes new classrooms, 2 new classroom areas that can be divided. And that gives you the opportunity to have performance training. You can have classes, you can have probably small screenings. You can rent out that space for conferences. I know our office has already claimed that we're going to rent it for our retreats. But this is what we try to do on the back left side. And to note, that second floor is actually in line with the height of the existing building. So it is taking into effect that we are at the height and the level of what would be the fly system and the ceilings of the existing building. On the right-hand side, we actually increased the projector room area to create a flexible seating and or office space up there, and we're refurbishing the marquee. Next page, please. And then last but not least, the reason why we have a third floor are 2 reasons. One is we love the views from the roof. It's absolutely phenomenal. So we have a rooftop deck that would become a green room of sorts. It's a really peaceful place to go. You could have events, large enough for events with small people. But we also have a massive amount of mechanical that we have to put on the roof to condition the building. And in order to screen it from the rest of the city, we actually hooked up the elevator tower and that mast that helps screen as you drive north on the 101 so you wouldn't see the mechanical. So that's what that bottom part of that floor is right there. And then on the right-hand side, you're just seeing the roof, the beautiful barrel vaulted roof of the existing building. Next page, please. Next page. The next thing that we did was, and we were asked to do, even though we fought it, was provide parking. Everybody loves parking, right? In the back, we have new accessible parking and a new parking lot. The parking lot itself actually holds storage tanks for stormwater underneath it, so that we're dealing with all the runoff from the property underneath the parking lot. And then we have a loading dock that provides the back of that building. What you're seeing on the left-hand side is actually the amphitheater and a landscape feature. We have these beautiful piano key type tiles that we've designed into the entry procession from the parking lot to the front door of the petition. And then that also has your stage. And that leads you up a small amphitheater to a grassy surface where you can sit and think about how you could have a picnic and listen to a band play. And then there's a wall that separates you from the public plaza. Now, the public plaza is a great feature. It's the one curve on Highway 1 it takes you through downtown and it changes your perspective between the north part and the south part of Guadalupe. But it is a pinch point, so it's nice to have a place for 50 or 60 people to come out of the theater and not have to be standing on the sidewalk. So that's the main purpose, but it is a community asset and we designed for people to sit and to gather and to hang out. Next, please. Oh, there you go. You can see those features right there. Next, please. All of the amenities, the site design has been contextually thought of to pay homage to the original design. A lot of the stucco and then we'll call it the agrarian material typologies that you have here locally, we brought into the plaza, into the landscape. And so a lot of it is very clean and contemporary, maintenance free, and really allows for us to honor the building. Next, please. And so you can see here the drought tolerant planting that we're putting up front, a flat turf area for the outdoor seating for events, and then the landscape planting and stormwater management that happens on the south part of the property. Next, please. And this is just a quick look of the palette of some of the landscape materials, a lot of drought tolerant, succulent, and natives that we're going to add to the landscaping so that we're not dealing with costly watering and irrigation. Next, please. And so these are the renderings that we came up with. Again, the federal government and the state government made us change a lot of things on that back building, but what you're seeing here is that back 3-story addition allows for us to pay homage to the front of the building without overshadowing it. This perspective is really kind of taking into account the idea that the materials are separate. You don't get confused what could be old and what is new, but you still see us paying homage to the colors of those louvers that are on the south side of the building, the brick tone, and then showing the difference and the reverence really by creating a stucco material that is white. And it actually pulls up that really beautiful structural lintel that goes across that brick facade. Next, please. Here's that amphitheater showing a little bit of that back entry, which you can walk down from Highway 1 and come around from the back street parking lot. Next, please. And then this is the view from the parking lot. The big thing here to understand is that the original design, the intent of the design was to make sure that we had enough room for parking and for the landscape features, but also provide an opportunity in the future if we needed to add on to it, that the building was the kind of tight and tall in its stature and wasn't sprawling. So we can talk about that in length, but that was kind of the direction we got from the stakeholders. Next, please. And that's it.
Thank you. We'll bring it to the council, and I wanted to know if Councilmember Whitney Burness, did you have any questions before we open it up to the public?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
About anybody else, Phil?
No, nothing for me.
Okay. And we'll go ahead and ask the rest of the council before we open to the public. Any questions at this time?
With the mention that if we do not have EDA funding, we can use this as tax credit.
Do you have that? Do you have that?
This is all the way up.
Sorry. Yes, so we have some timelines issues with the EDA. So I hate to bring up the potential because it's a horrible thing to think of losing $5 million. But the money for the EDA didn't come from the traditional EDA money. It came from Biden's infrastructure. And because it's emergency infrastructure money, they have some stricter timelines. So we have to start construction March of 25. Now, while these are hard dates, if we were to have a contract and the contractor was to start April of 2025, we'd be okay. But if we don't even have a contract, we're in trouble. They also expect the project to be finished in 27, March of 27. So worst case scenario, we don't have the 3 million we need. We'll have to change the project, right? If we change the project, all of those things that we said got done, the plan check, the bid packages, they're all wrong now. We have to do new plans. A new plan will not get done by March of 25. So the EDA money goes. The potential of what we would then have is maybe the movie theater and nothing else. If we have the movie theater and it's historic and we're building it historically, we think that we have enough money to just do the theater, especially if we can bring in the historic tax credit for that. I'd rather say goodbye to the historic tax credits and have a full project. But that's one of the scenarios that we're looking at.
Thank you. Bill, questions and comments?
No, I mean, I think everybody enjoyed getting a thorough presentation. Those are nice plans, but we gotta figure out how we can come together and find something in our means that we can do, so definitely. But I'd love to hear from the public here.
Yeah, Whitney, you okay to go to the public?
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you.
All right, let's, you have,
I have a question.
sure, please.
On the historical tax credit, how much would those even be, and like how many trickle in? Because I know they're not all at once.
Well, there's a few problems with the historic tax credits. First of all, we have to create an LLC to collect the money, which we haven't done at this point because we're not going to get them. So we have to create the LLC to collect the money. We guesstimate somewhere between, for cash purposes, and then we cream off all the things that everybody gets out of it, somewhere between 600,000 and 700,000.
Right.
It basically all comes in once construction starts. So there's an application process for historic tax credit. Application one, make it historic. Application two, get the plans approved historically by the federal architect. We've done that. Application three, which is the final one, is start construction.
So historical tax credits are those annually, or those
No, it's one chunk of money.
100,000 again, it's still not enough to cover the project.
Correct.
Just one last comment before we move on to the speakers or to those who have questions. I think that the plans are exquisite, if you ask me. The end product would be a great one for the community of Guadalupe. It's just how do we get there? And that's why we're here. So, Brian, any other comments? We'll go through the speakers. If those of you that arrived late, if you want to speak, there's speaker request forms in the back. And I'll start with Deborah Sykes. No, it's not Deborah. Oh, there she goes. Okay. And each individual will have 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
I've lived in Guadalupe for 35 years, and yes, to some of you, I'm a child. in that respect, because I know many people who have lived here their entire lives and their families have been here for generations. Despite the fact that I'm relatively new. I love this town and I've seen the retail, the historic retail disappear, and it breaks my heart. The population has grown exponentially and the balance with the retail is off the mark. We're way low in retail to help support our community and support us historically as the Royal Theater would do in my belief. I do want to know about the parking. What kind of parking do we have? 11 spaces. So that means that Guadalupe Street, Highway 1 will be overwhelmed if we have big events. But in my mind, it's worth it. I believe in this project. I'd like to see the city thrive. And I think that anything we can do is a benefit. And I know this is gonna cost money and it's gonna cost me money in my property taxes, but in my mind, I'm willing to do that. Now these property taxes that are gonna be used for this purpose, how long, is that a never-ending thing?
30 years.
30 years. 30, okay, I did hear that, 30 years. And is there any chance that these funds will be reallocated? No, they can't be, okay, all right. What do we have any estimated rental fees for events? None? None, okay. Oh, the operator, I see. Our Guadalupe community event going to be built? Will they be? No,
Well, I can't say that.
okay,
The operator and the city have to negotiate that issue.
right, okay, all right, so, people from out of the city, whatever, but. Like, if I wanna have an event, I don't wanna have to pay a big premium price for that. I just also wanted to say that people who are not in attendance today, new members to the community and old members have all told me that they are for this project. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Next, the individual, Mr. George Alvarez. There you go.
Now, I have no problem with the project. It's the cost factor that bothers me. 10 million plus should be enough to take care of what we need. I'm not for raising property taxes with the large amount of money that you're receiving. There's a lot of people that live here that really have a history of not actually accepting the ability of the city council to do its job. We've gone through various phases of taxes. Pool, for example, is one of them. Added taxes. I heard $77 all, wait a minute. What are the taxes per 100,000 value of the house for 30 years? I would like to have that known before I vote for something that's gonna raise my taxes if I have property here. I mean, this is business. 10 point something should be sufficient to take care of the job. If not, we don't need to be in the business of continuously asking the general public for a handout. What's the return? I've done activities at that theater. I had 2 back-to-back 4th of July celebrations with the Hancock College, acted some dancers and whatnot during 4th of July. The reception is very low in the community here. They don't accept certain things here. Which again, is a downside in developing any form of income for the purpose of having activities. Again, I think the money is enough. Find ways of other sources if possible. If we can just take care of the theater, start fine, do it in areas of progression. We're always caught up in time frames, timeline. And the general public gets screwed. Thank you.
Thank you. Next person, Mr. Al Nunez. Junior. Are you speaking?
Is it on? Okay. I just wanted to drop in some comments about the other side of this project. Because tonight we've heard a lot about the figures and the wonderful output of the way the project will lay out and all that. The impact of an arts program or performing arts center on a community is actually calculable. There's a lot of data that suggests that bringing focal point of arts development to a community can do wonders for its younger generations, but also for its older generations. The city of Phoenix, quite bigger than we are, but the city of Phoenix, when they developed their arts center, they saw in the arts downtown area, they saw 104% increase in tax revenues against a citywide deficit of 1%. So, and there's a lot more examples like that. There's a lot more data like that. But essentially, developing a performing arts center here, of course, we've talked about greater tax revenues, but the community becomes more connected. Projects that are born within the community and put on by the community and developed by the community start to develop a community pride. And soon your city council meetings will be standing room only all the time. But beyond that, the data also suggests that participants who are more involved in arts programs are also more involved in civic issues. Going back to community pride and caring more about the home that we have. It's not just a place to get our mail, it's our home. I think Tom mentioned the Guadalupe Youth Theater back in the 2000s, done by the regular. He did it for 3 years. And he still has alumni from his program commenting on what an impact that program had. The kids had to learn how to stage a play, a musical. They had to learn how to build a stage. They had to do all of them. But it isn't just free labor. When you have a project like that, the skills that all the participants start to develop or enhance, accountability, time management, creative expression, pride and accomplishment of what you build, all of that. I personally, I have a report in the Library of Congress, and the subject is using theater as a medium of education. It was my senior project at Cal Poly. The research that I did for that study took 3 years, and I developed a theater club of high school students. And we traveled up and down California for 3 years, promoting AIDS awareness in 1993. The impact of the arts on this community outweighs for me any costs that I'm willing to pay on my property taxes. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. The next individual, Melissa Chavez.
First of all, I will follow that. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you for letting me share my thoughts and my experience.
You can speak, use the mic.
Can you hear me? Okay. Like other Guadalupeans, I finally remember the Royal Theater as a fundamental part of my childhood. Many of us recollect going to the show and seeing our favorite movies. One of my earliest recollections is of sitting in the front row with my sister to watch the premiere screening of The Beatles' It's a Hard Day's Night, 1964. The screaming of my auntie's friends seated behind me was deafening and a quintessential childhood memory, not just for me, but many in my community. A decade later, the theater was packed with many of the same people who cheered Guadalupe kids celebrating their 8th grade promotions, including me. There's a photo on the back table, by the way, of that. Everyone would say. The Royal Theater was one of the few places where entire families could gather on a weekly basis to enjoy popular American movies as well as multicultural screenings of Filipino and Mexican films, Latino, attend talent shows, and even watch a simulcast of Muhammad Ali's latest prize fight. No other building drew community members from all walks of life like the Royal, which sits vacant and crumbling today. One memory I have is Mr. Domingo. He's a Spanish and art teacher in 8th grade. He selected a group of drawings and oil paintings from his class to be displayed at Security Pacific Bank downtown. My work was included, and I can't express how encouraging that was to this kid, particularly given my report card, which included a D in Spanish, with an A. So it was in the city council chambers right here. This room that I attended English class as a junior high school student. And it was here that Mr. Billigmeyer encouraged us to read literature and even speak from the lectern. Still feel the same like I did that. I didn't believe that I was qualified to make my voice heard in any way, but the suggestion that I could contribute helped to build in me a confidence that paid off during my senior year of high school in Cottonwood, Arizona. It was there that I discovered a campus with an indoor amphitheater as the centerpiece of the school. And it was there that I became immersed in the performing arts. Not only did I thrive, mediocre C grades became A's. Later, as a churchgoer, I led congregations in musical worship. And as a parent, I learned to play the guitar and taught my children how to play too. All three grew up to be musicians. In other words, the extra effort by Mr. Billigmeyer, Mr. Domingo, and my drama teacher in Arizona made a difference in my experience from being just okay. Really great. As you know, the Royal Theater is located within the Japanese enclave at the south end of Guadalupe's historical commercial business district. The theater was opened in 1940 by Arthur Shogo Fukuda. Oh, hold on, the best part's coming. Okay. But in 1942, Mr. Fukuda was forced to sell the building when he and his wife were interned in the Jerome Relocation Center in Arkansas. One of the great ironies, of course, of our community is that as war bonds were being sold at the Royal Theater in 1942, its owner and many Japanese Americans like him were being rounded up and sent away. My appeal today on behalf of the Royal Theater is a little bit quieter, but no less significant. I see more than a neglected building. What I see is a world of possibility. I too have a vision for kids to thrive just like I did. So I stand on the shoulders of great teachers and others who are working right now in this town to make Guadalupe a great place to live. So I humbly ask members of the council and mayor to preserve, renovate, and indeed enlarge our beloved icon in honor of Arthur S. Fukuda, who established it to benefit generations of Guadalupeans right now and here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it. Next individual, Medea.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm just, so my name is Medea Pena. I currently work with Family Service Agency of Hospital Park. And I'm here just to kind of share a couple observations. I don't live here, I just work and play here, so I don't really feel like I have a place to express a stance, but I just wanted to share some of the things that I've been kind of hearing from the community that we work with. It's very complex, I think there's no doubt about that, and I do think that this presentation and hearing folks' comments kind of helps paint a picture. I heard a lot of people saying yes, a lot of no's, a lot of people highlighting the pros, the cons. I think one of the most common concerns that I keep hearing is community access to the building once it's there. I think other community members mentioned a little bit about that. I think a lot of the fear is also coming around. A lot of the no's seem to be coming from folks that are currently in financial hardships. I think adding an additional expense at the end of the year can make a big difference for folks who maybe don't have an income and potentially rely on like Social Security, for example. Something else that I kind of wanted to highlight was it's a bond for 30 years, and I think I've heard maybe talks around additional ones for school. I just can't help but to think about between now and 30 years, how many other things might come up that might require like a last resort like this. I wanted to share something else that's not really related, but I think it relates to a certain extent. I want to say, I think it was maybe last October, I had gone to a gun violence training. And one of the takeaways I took from this training, it was 3 days long, but one thing that came up and that kind of stuck with me was it's on projects that benefit the community, but we have to think about sustainability. And the thing that stood out was it's so important to fund things, but also to keep the funding there because it can almost damage the community more if there's not like consistency, and then programs get shut, and then that really can impact youth and people who partake in these new projects. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next individual is Jeannie Miller.
Good evening. My name is Jeannie Mello, and I've lived here for 21 years. My comments are really just born out their reasons. I didn't really come prepared to talk. But Tom, you were talking about bid packages. I just wonder how many, do we have the handheld? How many bid packages there are? Are there more than one?
Sorry, the big packages where you've got your project and you've got all of your plans, specifications and plans, and the big package includes those specifications, the plan, and the city's rule. And it's one package, it goes out for bid, and usually about 60 to 90 days, we wait for contractors to submit those bids. We are then required to take the lowest bid.
Do you know how many bids you have?
We haven't gone out, yeah.
Oh, just a note for everyone. Don't point the microphone at the speaker.
Yes.
Thanks. That was me.
Can you come back this way, Jean? Please, thank you. You got a minute and a half.
Oh, well, steal my time.
I'm not. You got 3 minutes total.
Unless you got a lot. Okay. You're talking about the 3 million. What guarantee is there that it's not gonna go higher?
No.
No, good. Okay. Well, I think the estimate is a problem because it's so wishy-washy. There's nothing, really written in stone. Too many variables. And I just have a question for Andrew. You were talking about using it for your retreat.
You'll pay. All day.
No, I have. That has nothing to do with this. Are you gonna pay? Does that mean like a overnight thing? Oh, okay.
It's like a conference room size that's up there,
Uh-huh.
so anybody could rent it out, you could have 50 people up there. So a business could come in and have a conference, convention, talk, and
When I come to your retreat.
yes, absolutely. You're welcome.
Okay, I'm done.
Thank you, Jeannie. Next individual, Myra? Mira, sorry.
Hi, everyone. My name is Mira and I'm with the Guadalupe Visual and Performing Arts Center with GB PAC. And I just want to say that the GB PAC has worked closely with the city both on the renovation of the Royal Theater and on the broader community in Guadalupe since 2019. The GB PAC was involved in the early stages of design with AGG, and in January of 2022, the city of Guadalupe adopted a resolution approving an MOU with GB PAC and the city as the eventual occupation operator of the Royal Theater. While I acknowledge that the resolution is now expired, I think it's important to note the commitment GB PAC has had to the theater for the past 5 years and this project as a whole. Outside of the theater itself, GB PAC has and will continue to be committed to expanding the arts and children-focused opportunities in Guadalupe and the broader Santa Maria Valley. We've partnered with various organizations to host events and workshops, including working with the GBA, the June Center, Mackenzie, Viva El Arte out of Santa Barbara. We are really committed to seeing the Royal Theater renovated and reopened, and we believe having multiple efforts raising the additional funds only improves to its full potential. The GB PAC has met with the CAC, the city's new nonprofit, 3 times over the past 2 months, expressing interest in partnering with the city to run an additional capital campaign that can only help and not hurt the current financial situation. We were told to present a proposal to the CAC, who would then bring the proposal for formal approval. This proposal has been shared with the CAC, and we look forward to hearing any updates from the CAC or the city so we can begin these efforts. If any of the community or other organizations would like to partner with the GB PAC efforts, we would love any and all partnerships, and we hope to see the theater up and running. Thank you.
Thank you, and Chachi. Next, individual, Garrett Asuda.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me up here, and first off, I want to acknowledge all the hard work that that Tom has done towards fundraising, but also the incredible amount of work that Andrew Goodwin has done. It's much appreciated. I have a couple actual questions and a couple statements. One of the questions I had is, I was looking through the estimate that Precision provided, and one thing that I did not see, and it's totally possible that I just overlooked it, was any mention of the marquee itself. So knowing that what a big part of the identity of the theater and the fact that that's one of the primary ways of marketing events for the city, I wanted to make sure that that was included in there. Couple other questions. Let's see. Talking about operational debt, I'm sorry, these are not in order. But talking about operational debt, which was something, Tom, that you had brought up, I was wondering if a successful capital campaign would mitigate those debt obligations for operations. So if the capital campaign was specific towards operational costs, if that would help in that respect. Let's see, another question I had. If the gap that's been discussed, the 2.6 rounded up to 3 million, if that specific gap in cost is really considered soft costs versus construction costs, is the EDA grant still affected? I'm not sure if there's a difference between construction costs and hard costs. If the EDA is specific only to construction costs, then maybe we can skirt around that deadline issue. Don't know. The other two statements I had were that, I did hear in the presentation that one of the requirements for any future operator, and I am totally aware, and my disclosure of being treasurer for the GV PAC, I'm totally aware of the requirement that it has to be publicly noticed. I get that. But one of the things I did want to point out was that any future operator needed to have an advisory committee. And that is something that the GV PAC is committed to and has already started creating an advisory committee. Additionally, there were some questions by the audience about rental costs and things like that. One of the things that the GV PAC has done is created some forecasting. I don't have those numbers with me, but those numbers can be provided to council. And thanks. I'll be quick. The last thing really was to mention that when it comes to talking about, sorry, keep popping the mic here. When people talk about economic development and how the theater is going to help, absolutely, without a doubt, I believe it's going to help. That's something that the Guadalupe Business Association, since its inception, when Councilman Robles was the kickoff president, that's something that the GV PAC has been really focused on, is economic development for the city. But it's also important to note that there's no silver bullet. There's nothing that's going to turn the economics of this town around just because it's there. There's got to be long range planning. There's got to be integration and cooperation between a multitude of businesses, because it's not just a theater. There's real estate concerns, availability of retail space, all sorts of things that have to be talked about. So this is a much wider discussion. But I did want to really emphasize the fact that the GVA stands committed to work with the city on these long-range economic development plans. So that's all I got.
Okay,
Thank you.
Is there anyone else on the audience that didn't fill out a form and wish to speak?
Hi, I'm Melanie Backer and I'm a resident of Guadalupe, and I really echo what Al was saying and Melissa was saying and what Garrett and Mira have been saying. I think I think your design is gorgeous. Your design's gorgeous. And I had a great high school. I had great theater art training. It gave me confidence. It changed my life. And it helped in so many ways. And I have teachers too. So I'm fully behind this project. My problem is the communication that we have going. And I guess we've got to figure it out. But in April 2023, there was an estimate and it rose to 13.8 million. Why didn't the rest of us know? Why didn't the GBA know? Why didn't the rest of us know? Because we have other access to get money. But when I heard about it was March 2024, and I don't understand this miscommunication. And a year for consultants to find out that you can't get those new market tax credits, that doesn't make sense to me. So I think this is all great. We got to do what we got to do. I say let's keep it going to make sure that it happens, a bond or whatever. But the communication is bad, and I think we need checks and balances. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Nichols.
Good afternoon, Councilman here. I just want to say a few words about the investment in our community. When I came to work here at the Guadalupe schools in 1972, believe it or not, the school administration prided itself in sending money back to Sacramento. The money was supposed to be used for underachieving students. Luckily, that changed. And not only were other things going wrong in this school district, it took 20 years, maybe, to turn that around. And yes, remember, Mr. Billigmar, this class was my class. I taught third grade bilingual here. There was a closet, Mrs. Ali was. So, so it's an investment, as I mentioned the other day at the last council meeting. We can't afford not to take this opportunity to make this community continue thriving, because it's already thriving, and thanks to Los Amigos de Guadalupe, thanks to all the other agencies that have contributed, Family Service Agency included. Just as on a personal note, both of our sons went to the school. I was their principal. One went to Berklee College of Music, majored in songwriting. He's now here in San Diego working remotely in Boston, Berklee College of Music. But our other son is a construction manager working for the school districts up and down the coast. So there are other examples of individuals that have gone to school. I talked to a parent the other day whose daughter is going to be a heart surgeon in San Jose. Her last name, Cepeda, you know. So I just want to leave that with you, that it is an investment. It's going to be, yes, it's a hardship for some folks to pay, but in the long run, it will, you know, things will prevail, and we will have this town like the future that we want it to be. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Segovia.
Council. Yeah, I just wanted to say a couple quick things. Though I don't live in town anymore, Guadalupe's in my blood. I mean, it's in there. You can't remove it. But I was here. There's nothing to do in Guadalupe. There's nothing to do, you know. And here we have an opportunity to do something. So all these people that are saying there's nothing to do, especially like we have new homes here, and they're finding there's nothing to do. Well, look at this. Here is something to do. And the other part of it is, I think we should invest in our youth, especially Guadalupe has always been known for their superior lakes, superior, you know, just like Jose was just saying. There's people in town that, you know, that are overlooked oftentimes. This is the Hispanic community, most times it's said, you know, and Hispanics are going nowhere. But, you know, this kind of thing opens the doors for these Hispanic young people to experience something that's out in the world. And they can do it right here in Guadalupe. So if I lived here, I'd be in favor of it. And thank you.
Thank you, Dee.
Good evening. My name is Steve Herring. I live here in town, work here in town. I would, maybe some of the folks like Garrett and do we have an estimated operating cost? We talk about rentals, we talk about an operator. Do we have any operators expressing interest, or are these real people that exist? And does an operator want it? What will they, do we have other cities? Do we have comps of income statements from these types of projects? In other words, getting it built is one thing. Making a profit month after month after month after month in time, I know not immediately. Does it do we have any figures along that line of operational success?
I don't think we're at that point yet, but I know that the group that's, here? Well, there's groups that are interested in it, at least one so far, so we haven't put out the word in terms of others, but,
I was
We don't have-
gathering that.
we don't have-
That was kind of what I was gathering.
Right.
It seems to me that that would be a vital unanswered question.
she raised, well, why don't you stay there, Steve, and can you come up? Thank you.
We don't have any numbers to share right at this moment, but we have run numbers. We have run numbers and, created a projection and what the, 3 to 5 years would look like and what.
Yeah, that's.
No.
Give her the, yeah, give her the.
I need the mic, but I just wanted to say that, yes, the Guadalupe Visual Performing Arts Center does have a board actively running. We have projected what the first 3 to 5 years would look like, what the type of runway we would need. But I think that it is important to say, not just for the GBPAC, but for any potential operator that might come in. I think this is why we mentioned that communication is so important, because if it is a requirement of any funding source that, by early next year, that process has run its course. I think the types of conversations of what the city is expecting, it's important to have that information out there sooner than later, because everyone's going to need that information in order to be successful. And I think giving every nonprofit and every, potential operator all of the facts improves the chances of that long-term sustainability, resiliency, and success. And so I think that is a really key critical piece that has been missing from this so far. And I just want to express the crucialness of having those conversations be sooner rather than later for everybody, so that we can really get what's needed to have this be for the next 30, 40, 50, 100 years in the future, whoever comes in, and so that everyone has an opportunity to experience what these amazing plans have to offer, from feet to toe, or from,
Yeah.
And then therefore, let's say it was very profitable. Where will those funds go? Just the operator? Or will there be some payback to the city for all of our investment to build the place?
I think initial discussion there. Go ahead, Tom.
You have quite a few questions and I have some answers, so I thought maybe I should.
Thank you, Steve.
So there was discussions, and that is correct, that there was an initial relationship between the city and GBPAC. There has been conversations about, should this not be a more competitive process open to other nonprofits? So in answer to some of your questions, the city is in the middle of writing an RFP with what will be called something like a lease/management agreement, where the agreement between the nonprofit and the city will outline a lot of these things. The RFP will have questions in it, and I don't want to say what those questions are because it's competitive. But there would be questions asking the things that you have questions about. The long-term sustainability of the theatre does depend on the nonprofit that's operating. It also depends on the city's ability to supervise that nonprofit and their work. The hope is the RFP and the management agreement will cover all of those bases. That's the theory behind it. Additionally, you will notice in the costs that were in there was 3 numbers in there for reserves. So anytime you build a new building or start a new building or renovate a building, it's always important to have what's called reserves. One reserve, for example, is capital reserve, where you put some money in a bank and you say, if that money stays there, it grows, and should the roof need to be replaced, you've got the money sitting there. You also have a maintenance reserve and what's called an operating reserve. So presently, the cost of this project includes 3 reserves, so 3 reserves in there. So there is funding as a reserve to get the project up and going. And there'll be agreements that that reserve stays there, that operational reserve stays there for the purposes of the future COVID. Yeah, you need money in a reserve for those future things. It's not completely, you're absolutely right that those things are not there now. The goal here is to have that agreement and the operator done before construction starts. Because we believe that the operator should be there when construction starts. And be a part of the construction team. And so that is the plan. If the RFP and the management agreement all gets done, the management agreement has to go to council for approval. So you'll be able to see that management agreement when council gets it. So it's not a complete answer, but it's what I can tell you now.
Who knows, what's the bottom line, will it be profitable? You know, income versus what costs to run it.
Well, and that's why we think that the operator, one of the questions that the operator should be able to answer is those questions, not the city.
Just think we should know before we build. You know, or before we have a bond.
Well, yes and no. Most performing arts centers do get built by the operator, by the non-profit performing arts center. And so in those situations, you're absolutely right, they do have those information, but this is being built by the city. And so it's slightly different for that reason. But we still should have the information. It's just not coming as fast as, you know, we all want.
Thank you. Mr. Brown.
Names are new from Navarro, lifetime resident here in Guadalupe. And it seems to me that it seems like the bond's the most logical because we're gonna get everything we want. But that being said, the community is gonna want blood because it's like this is gonna have to pay off for us, or we're expecting much because we're paying for it pretty much, you know, not in reality, but that's kind of, I feel like the feel that it's gonna get. That being said, whoever the operator is, they should be local enough to know this town, to implement all the programming that shows. I don't know the woman that talked about the Japanese program, the Filipino program, the Mexican programming. That all has to be incorporated. The culture has to grow, and it has to come from people that know the culture, you know, that it, otherwise, you know, one, we're going to feel like an outsider in our own place. And two, you know, maybe a possible offset would be, hey, Wednesday nights, you have a Guadalupe resident on your ID, it's free for a movie, one night out of the week. You know, that little things like that implement, that come from the operator makes you feel good. You know, it's just like, oh, okay, well, I'm being, you know, taken care of. Like, you want to see results and you want to see, you know, come from a meaningful place. That being said too, it is a nice design, but I will say the outdoor amphitheater isn't really, it's kind of like being here, it's cold and it's windy and it's not ideal for outdoor performances or mic'd up performances. So it's just like, it looks nice, but in reality, I don't think it's gonna get the use that we really like it to be. That's just my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else out there?
I don't need a microphone. I also I'm a singer, songwriter, recording artist, and I just want to reiterate the joy and the influence that theater and music had in my life. The other thing, and I hope this isn't appropriate, I'm a graphic designer. Any of the nonprofits helping with this project or otherwise, I'm available to do flyers, mailers, banners, anything like that. If you're interested, see me out of your part.
Thank you.
I can vouch for her, she's good.
Okay.
And I think
Thank you.
You got the remainder of the 30 seconds.
30. Why don't you like me? I want to go back to the lack of communication here. And it's just a sorry little mess because, you know, Tom and I have gone round and round on Facebook about if he's saying it was the information was available way back when, and I'm trying to get him to understand that doesn't mean that we got the information. And you know, I figure if we can get a damn flyer out in the mail, we can get information out in the email to the residents of what's happening here. You know, I don't drive north very often, so I don't see the theater marquee. And it's ridiculous to expect people to use that as a form of communication. I think there should be a master email list. Maybe there is, like, I would assume there is. And that's how people need to receive their communication around here. Or I could get a pair of skates and.
Owen, our audience there via Zoom, Whitney, any comments, Phil?
No comments, Mr. Mayor.
I just want to thank everybody for coming out and the very good information that was shared from the community and everybody that's been working on the project. It's been very helpful for me coming into the council just a couple months ago. So thanks for catching me up, and thank you all for being there.
Steve, James, any comments from you? If you're still there? I think one comment regarding communication is very important. I think that from the get-go, we need to make sure it's included in our agenda that we talk about updates on what's going on with the theater. And I appreciate the gentleman here that we have. And if you can actually do a recap of narrative of what some of the questions that were asked, and so that we can respond to the community about what's going on from Andrew and also from Tom. Any comments, further comments from the?
Ms. Cross, have a comment?
Oh, well, why don't you come up?
If tonight you vote to move forward with the bond, and then it becomes part of the next cycle of voting. And
It's not tonight.
right, but if it comes on the ballot, and if residents vote no,
Right.
what happens?
Well, I think that it was mentioned that there's all these different avenues that I mentioned this before. There's a toolbox that has some tools in it. One of them is the bond. And if that doesn't work, because you need a screwdriver as opposed to a wrench, then we look at the other toolbox, which is foundations, we have a lot of individual farmers perhaps that may want to kick in. You have the Japanese community, you have the Latino community, you have the Shumash, you have all these avenues that we need to look at. And I think that I appreciate Andrew being here to show the specifics of what's going on. And I think it's correct that a lot of people haven't seen this, and they will from now on. And so there's more avenues than just a bond. And it's going to be an uphill battle to have that, and 2/3 of the community to support that. So I think we need to use that other toolbox to say, what else can we, what other menu we have out there to go after additional funding?
Also, possibly your materials could be in Spanish as well. I'm worried that we're missing a whole bunch of people that are, typically at work most of the day, and they've missed all of this information and what comes across, which I think has been wonderful information, and it's really great to hear about. But if it's not available in the language that most people are speaking, then it's not really available to them.
All right, thank you.
You want to comment about the difference between the bond communication and the project communication, and that the city has restrictions on it from talking about the bond,
Yeah, because of the bond, the city cannot be involved in any way at all in moving that bond forward. So politically and otherwise, we can't push that. It has to come from, volunteers, to move it forward. Shirley, you coming up? Okay.
Better late than never.
Hit the mic. And just
Shall I try?
Give her the.
Shall I try? Okay, fine. All right. I've been thinking the bond issue is going to be the biggest issue here. I don't know if any of you have seen the handout that came from the Santa Maria School District. But they've got 194 million as of now that's going on the bond on the ballot in November. Our 3 million will be peanuts according to that. But you've got to factor all that in. Every bond issue that goes in there has an amount that everybody's going to be paying for 30 years. People who are renters are not home free, because if your landlord has to pay a big chunk, believe me, it's going to be parceled out to every renter. So I think everybody needs to think very carefully on this, how it will impact. It's a lovely project. And in our lifetime, we have wants and we have needs. To me, the lovely theater is a want. A need is going to be getting that sewer plant going quickly. And that is something all of us can support. Thank you.
We have another individual.
Just wanted to add a postscript to my experiences of growing here.
You should speak up.
On Facebook, I posted something on it was August 17th, 2017, long before any of this was discussed. I looked at some pictures that Al Ramos put up of school classes. And what I saw in black and white was a melting pot. And I get stoked and I get moved when I read one post, when it shows up every year. Because it's real to me. Let me just read this part. What I posted, the photographic collection of Guadalupe School District's students is representative of the hands and hearts that form a hometown community. Look at us. Japanese, whose fellowship rallied to finance construction of our school, and Swiss Italians who influenced architecture and agriculture. We are a fascinating melting pot of Native American, Chumash, Chinese, Filipino, Mexican, Spanish, Portuguese, African American, European cultures, and more. We are from Guadalupe. We are generations who stuck close through thick and thin, who endured internment camps, whose sons went off to war, whose families tilled the soil, and who stood shoulder to shoulder in times of national racial divide. We're from Guadalupe. We bow low to pray and to work, hang tough to persevere, and stand tall to overcome. You know, when I look at the folks that built this town and who persevered through the Great Depression, through recessions, through COVID, 4 years, and some folks didn't even survive. When I think of all of what we've overcome and what people who pick our crops overcome every day just to get through another day and come home, I think we can do this. I think we can hang tough and persevere just like our forefathers and mothers did. We've got the goods right here. The I'm a half full cup, kind of gal. I see the cup rising to the top and spilling over. I think we all want the same thing. And I think we can all do it because many hands make light work. It's been proven time and time again in this town. And I think we can do it again if we want to.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, seeing no other hands and no individuals on the Zoom. Thank you all for being here. It's and I, again, when it comes to communication, everybody needs to be more cognizant of what we need to do and let people know what's going on. So we have Andrew, anything else? Tom, anything else? If not, we have a motion to adjourn.
I motion to adjourn.
For a second,
I'll second that.
any discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 All ayes. Thank you all.
Do you need help? If the doors are open?
No.
Yeah.